I came into this program from an illustration career, and I was aware that there were many gaps in what I knew and what I didn't know.
I didn't really even know how to hold a pencil, and now I'm like making, giant oil paintings.
Just seeing that learning is possible, improvement is possible, oh, I want a little more of that.
Even now, I look at the work that I can do, and it's way beyond what I could do before.
Especially when you come to the end of the year projects, and you you do your CAS project or whatever, and it's oh wow, I can really do this now.
Every year, new learners come in, varying levels of skill, but then by the end of the year, the growth it's tremendous.
Georgetown Atelier is a classical drawing and painting program that also recognizes the important role that imaginative realism plays within the classics. Imaginative realism is one of those terms that what tends to come to mind is just straight up fantasy drawing and painting. That's only what I consider a portion of what imaginative realism is. The moment that you're creating something that's not just a setup that's in front of you, you need to use tools to put the information together and make it believable. The Death of Socrates by David, there's no fantastical elements in that, but I would still consider it imaginative realism because those figures in the painting, they weren't all there at the same time, and the artist needed to compile the information together and make it a coherent composition. The moment that we walk through those doors at the atelier, we're in a learning environment. It's never about, does this drawing suck or is this drawing awesome? It's always about how to problem solve what is needed for that drawing to improve. When students begin in the drawing portion of the program, we start at the absolute basics. Sometimes folks will say, I want to paint like Sargent, right? Or I want to paint like Bouguereau, or I want to paint like Rembrandt. What I tell all of the students, you want to develop a broad base so that then you can eventually specialize in one of those directions.
When you come in, you've got big eyes, and you're oh, this is all great, but when you start learning, you just sort of realize there's so much more to learn than you'd previously thought.
We're learning how to develop good habits mechanically and conceptually. The first major theme to learn seems really straightforward, but it's more difficult than one would think. And that is learning from observation, right? Learning just how to see.
I remember over the course of a couple weeks, you go from looking at a thing, thinking that you've drawn that thing, and then coming back to it and realizing that there were things to see that you were clearly looking at but didn't even know that you weren't seeing until you just keep looking at it and you keep trying to describe it.
You'd be surprised at how difficult it is to not get sucked into the details first and how to see the big picture.
Tanaya and the other teachers really work with you to imagine the path forward. I think that's one thing that's really great about this structure is that it keeps you moving. You always, as you're making one painting, you have an idea of what the next step is going to be.
The way our curriculum is structured is both with iterative exercises and kind of longer projects where they're designed to kind of slow down and really sink your teeth in.
Going through a structured program where you're learning how to approach a new, slightly more complicated problem, each project that you take on has really made a big difference in, how quickly you progress, how much you can pick up, how much your skills improve.
So you are learning a skill, and you are immediately using that skill as you learn the next skill, and you use that skill as you learn the next skill. And so it's a very holistic education, which I liked.
Right now I'm working on a painting of my daughter where the arm needs to be imagined. It's exactly the same in some ways as imagining an entire world, because you're thinking about what shape would the form take, what's the anatomy like, how would the light hit it, what's the texture. Learning how to recreate is an emphasis of this program that you don't find in a lot of other ateliers.
I feel like being part of this community is huge.
Being actually shoulder to shoulder with people, I think, is just an irreplaceable, valuable part of what the Atelier offers.
You know, you get to see people's work. They're working on the same thing that you're working on at the same time. And I think it's one of the reasons why this type of atelier, being in person, is so much more valuable.
It's a really supportive space. There's a lot of community at this school and at Gage in general.
You kind of get to know everyone, and it's sort of like you become sort of like a bit of a family.
It's a really intense program. It's really challenging, and to kind of have that camaraderie is kind of really big in like getting us through the program.
I'm not afraid to like make mistakes. It feels really comforting a lot of times too, because you know, like, they've all got my back.
I'm just always really impressed at how generous our students are with one another in terms of sharing information. Sometimes you can, you know, have atelier environments that are very competitive. That's not the environment that we have.
I suppose I just, encourage anybody watching this just to dive in, give it a whirl, don't get discouraged.
I just think that it's been an amazing experience, and being able to see that growth so quickly.
So, you know, come here and paint stuff. I think that's all I got.